Welcome everyone, this is Yvonne Davis and David Steele of the Rocky Mountain Compassionate Communication Network. You are joining us for Unleash Your Creativity, a blending of The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron and Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. So we are in week 8 and we're continuing our series on our relationship to time. And one of the things that Julia Cameron mentions in week 8 is how people, they come up with excuses like they're too old, or they'll do it when they retire. And in the last video, David was talking about how he got this Edgar Cayce style reading in which the entity told him that he needed to learn the difference between things he was just going to fantasize about because that was pleasurable and the things he was actually going to do. So I think this is a really important topic when it comes to time, a relationship with time, and the things that Julia Cameron is talking about in week 8, because we can so easily make excuses. And I've seen this in my teaching because I taught creative writing workshops for 10 years with Colorado Free University. And I saw so many people who had this big dream about actually writing a book, whether it was a memoir or a novel. And they would talk about all their ideas and how excited they were and this and that and this and that, and ask questions like, well, what will my family think if I tell the truth in my memoir? And it's like they never wrote a single word. They're worried about what people will think, but they've never written a single word. And I saw this so many times. People thought that if they talked about the book, if they visualize the book, if they come to a writer's workshop, that they will actually write something. And they never wrote a word. And I'm thinking also of one particular person that I knew who, and still know, who also wanted to write and did write some op-ed pieces for the newspaper, some related to the area in which he worked. But he also dreamed of writing fiction. And he believed, well, he had a strong belief in having a steady job and a steady paycheck, and that writing was frivolous. You couldn't make a career at it, therefore it was frivolous. And so that's something that should be saved for retirement. And so he would always say that his dream was when he retired, he was going to start writing. Well, guess what? He retired, years and years and years went by, he never wrote a word. So that was the reality. And I think that by telling himself that he was going to do it when he retired, he could continue to live in that fantasy, which is really just self-delusion. And, you know, well, we make our choices. So he chose to have a steady paycheck rather than to be a writer. And that was his choice.
Well, and he assumed that it was a choice, that he couldn't do both.
Yeah, true. Right. So, so the question is, you know, are you willing to look at those things that you fantasize about and really get clear? Is this just a fantasy? Because fantasies can be very pleasurable, but they're just fantasies. So, you know, are you going to be honest with yourself about it?
I wonder what I'm fantasizing about.
Are you actually going to do it? So, you know, this is a very important question. Anyway, I'll hand it over to you now.
Probably the most constrictive delusion that we entertain is that we'll live forever and that I can do it tomorrow if I don't get to it today. And I'm going to tell another story about me. I was camped up on this, I just was getting away for an evening. I was like, it was a time in my life when my life was really uncomfortable. And I just needed to get away. And I went up with my tent, and I just got off this road, and I just hiked up this bluff and camped. And it started to rain, and I was all in the tent, and I was like, oh, you know, it's all raining and this sucks and everything. And but then I got up. Instead of just huddling in my sleeping bag and being bored and miserable, I got up and I stepped out into the rain, and it wasn't really cold. It was a light rain, and everything was so lush and green. And I thought, wow, this is really beautiful. This is really beautiful. I'm going to go on a hike. So I went on this hike in the dark, and I got confused, and I wondered, wait a minute. Can I get back to my tent? Where's my tent? Is it over this bluff? Is it over that bluff, or whatever? And I thought I was kind of heading in the right direction, and the slope started to get steeper and steeper. And then I kind of slipped. And then I had this realization that if I hadn't been able to stop myself, I'd be dead, because it was getting steeper and steeper and heading towards a cliff. And boom, the minute I had that realization, all of a sudden my body just got up and it walked straight to my tent, even though my mind had no idea where my tent was. And that brush with mortality, that sense of danger, really, like, the confusion vanished. The confusion just vanished. And so when we really ponder our mortality and that we are time limited on the planet, and really come to terms with that, it's really profoundly priority assessing. I mean, it makes it much easier for us to decide what's important and what's not important, and what we want to commit to and what we don't want to commit to. So I'll do it after retirement. You know, that's like, okay, I'm going to live forever. If I don't do it now, you know, I'll do it later. And what if there is no later? Do you really want to do it? And if you do it, you start today. There was a writer, I forget his name right now. I wish I remembered the name, but he said the main thing that a writer needs to help them is glue that holds them to the chair. Mm-hmm. You know, because that's how you write. You sit in your chair and you write. And if you don't write, you still sit in your chair and you look at the page. That was his way of doing it. And he became a very successful writer, and I don't remember his name. But, you know, that determination, that persistence, you know, it's really being in touch with the fact that we all die. Mm-hmm. That really enables that. Mm-hmm. And that also is what helps us when we make mistakes and when we fail, mm-hmm. so to speak, when we stumble and things don't manifest the way our vision said they should, and then we call it failure. One thing that really gave me courage when I started off on pioneering my own way was, well, if I screw it up, you know, I can't do any permanent damage because everything is temporary anyway. Mm-hmm. And so to me, to think that, and I did, I thought, oh, I have all this power to cause misery in other people's lives if I don't do it right. And the whole weight of the world is on my shoulders. And that's a form of self-importance. And mortality removes that. And it was tremendously liberating when I realized, you know, I might as well try, you know, because if I screw it up, so what? You know, 100 years from now, no one will know who I am. So just give it a shot. So that's, you know, and that really brings us in. I know I'm covering a lot of territory, and this is the last point. Death is a loss. Death is an entry into a void, into a nothingness that we, you know, when my dad died, it was the emptiness left in my life where he used to be that really drew out my appreciation of the contribution he had made to who I am. It was the absence that in a way made him complete and full. And so that learning to be comfortable with loss and not hide from it or suppress it, run away from it, but just acknowledging it as a sacred acknowledgement, as a sacred honoring that something really mattered to us, that was really important. When we can have that attitude, then we have the courage to try, even if we might fail. We have the sense of urgency so that we don't put stuff off. And I think I am complete with what I wanted to say about all that.
Okay. So there was one more thing I wanted to cover in this series on time. Now, I spoke at length in the last video about all the things that I do. And David had said that we make decisions where it's easier for us to make decisions if we're clear on our identity and our integrity. And then we have an inner locus of control. And so what I was saying is all the things I'm doing are important to me. They're coming from that inner locus of control. And yet there's still so much more. And I don't want to just shove it aside by saying, well, I'm just going to have to mourn that. Because that does feel like just shoving it aside, I don't know what to do with all of that.
So, sorry. Oh, yawns feel good sometimes. Oh, I just had to do that. So what's something?
Oh my gosh. One of the biggest is I want to spend more time with my daughter.
Okay.
It's almost going on 2 months. I usually try, she's an adult now, lives on her own, works, takes care of herself, is a college student. But I usually try to spend at least get together once a month, for some quality time. And I haven't seen her in 2 months. So that's feeling frustrating. And more, there are other people I want to spend time with. I haven't seen in so long. And so I'm mourning that. And even washing my car, I desperately need to wash my car because we've had snow and it kicks up and it makes the car so dirty with the salt that can rust your car. Desperately need to wash my car. And let's see what else. More exercise. Don't get enough exercise. That I'm able to, in my mind, tell myself, well, you'll exercise when the weather's warmer. I probably will, so I'm able to put that aside. More time for relaxation and entertainment. Like a spiritual practice, like daily meditation or something. For me, the artist's way to a large degree fills that, but I still would love to do sitting meditation. These are all things that are deeply important to me. And I simply don't have time, and it's not the kind of thing you just brush aside, especially like the first thing I mentioned, spending time with my daughter, And it's not that I couldn't make time. I know she's busy too. It's just that when you're so busy, I mentioned last weekend I actually hit a wall where I realized I had literally reached my limit. There was nothing left in me. And I had to take the day off. So I don't know what to say about all that.
Well, a couple of thoughts come to mind. One is that in a way it's a gift to be in such abundance that you have to choose. And spending more time with your daughter. The other stuff I can easily talk about, the spending more time with your daughter. you got spring break coming up, so why don't you just make a point of connecting her today and let her know you got your school break coming up and you'd like to spend some time with her, and just do it. In a way, it comes back to deliberation, making a deliberate decision. You know, I'm focused on this. I haven't seen her because I've decided to do this.
It's not just me. It's both of us. We both have extraordinarily busy schedules, so we both have to find that time.
Right. Exactly. But what my point was, and that's.
I just didn't want it to sound like I was just choosing this other stuff over her.
No, I hear what you're saying. It brings up two things when you say this. One is we live in an incredibly fragmented, fractured time. You know, there was a time in our history as humans where we were more of an extended family and our lives were woven together in the tasks that we did, and they were more home-based. And right now, we don't live that way. And I could do a whole long talk about that. But that's just part of the world that we live in. And it gets into another topic about time, about attention span and all of the stuff that comes up with us, to us, and how our awareness, how our attention is fragmented in all kinds of different areas. And to bring something to fruition takes concentration and devotion. So when I used to write computer programs to make money, I had to turn off the phone because just getting a phone call, if I was really deep into it, my mind was holding all kinds of threads. I remember one time I'd been going for about 5 hours and I got interrupted. And I totally lost track of where I was. It took me 3 hours to get back to the point where I could continue because I was holding so much intricacy. I had to have that kind of focus. So a lot of science, a lot of invention requires that kind of focus. So you're talking about the fragmented time. You know, another thing is the fact that you haven't seen your daughter and you're lamenting that reminds you that she's an important part of your life. And you can savor that. And then when you see her, since it's hard to schedule stuff and it's sporadic and all of that, when you see her, then you can keep in mind how precious it is that we've carved out this time together, and just really drink it in, really be present, really fully enjoy her presence while you're with her. The other thing, which is a part of our experience, is we move in seasons. You know, there's the really famous poem or psalm in the Bible that the Byrds made into a hit song, "To Everything There Is a Season." And that's part of it too. Right now, you're in this kind of hunker down, focus season. There have been times when you've had seasons of abundant leisure. And, you know, seasons of really being outward and active with others, seasons of being really introspective, interacting with yourself. That's just part of being human. So it's not about just mourning that. When I think of mourning, I think of more like, I put all this energy into creating this workshop and no one showed up. Is this really what I'm supposed to be doing? Then I might mourn that. Or in my case, you know, I had all this excitement about working with the math of Buckminster Fuller. Here we go, Buckminster Fuller kind of thing. And it was really a big deal, important part of my life for many years. And then one day I came to the realization that because of the communication work stuff I do, and writing and all of that, that this stuff what I had aspired to do, I probably was not going to accomplish with my life, because there just wasn't enough life to do this and do the other stuff. And I went through a series. First of all, I got really angry. It's like I was pissed. And then I went through this period of mourning, and I still work on it a little bit, but nothing like I used to. And so that's the kind of thing I mourn. You know, when my mom got old, she lived with me for a while, for 3 years, and she was getting pretty demented, and it took a major focus in my life to have her live with me. And boy, I'm sure glad I did, because this was a very, very sweet 3 years at the sunset time in her life. And then she went into a nursing home and was there for a while too, and still was a major focus, but not like when she was living with me. So that was not very economically smart, but in terms of my life and my spirit and the richness that I have derived from being, it was well worth it. But everything has a season. And part of being alive is being sad. Part of being alive is being joyful. And there's a sweetness to that. So I don't know if I answered your question.
I think that I felt I was able to experience some empathy. Yeah, I felt that. So I think this would be a good place to stop for today.
I have one thing I want to say I think is a good place to stop. Since this is the chapter on strength, and since this is the artist's way, and whoever is doing this work, you know, if you're watching this video, there's something in it that calls to you. There's something about the artist's way that inspires you, enlivens you. Listen to that, because life is short. And really take the time to be yourself. Take the time to explore these desires, these drives, these deep yearnings within yourself, and bring them out into the world and see what they look like. Because if you don't do it, it won't happen. And so I would say do it now. You know, do it today. And just really honor that part of yourself that drives you to be watching these videos and following this book.
All right, so thank you again for joining us, and thank you for subscribing to this channel and ringing the bell for notifications, clicking like on this video, sharing with your social media, friends and family. And also, if you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them in the comment boxes below. And this concludes the segment of the week for me and David, and then the last video for this week will be my end of week check-in. So David and I together will see you in week 9.
Week 9.
Yeah.